Bikes are simple things, really. Beautifully simple, in fact. But if there is one thing that can dramatically reduce your enjoyment of them, though, it's dodgy gears. So not changing gears when you want to, and changing gears when you don't. Fortunately, though, actually setting up your gears is remarkably straightforward, as long as you avoid these mistakes. Now, if you're watching this video, I'm fairly sure you're not guilty of this mistake. But if you know someone who is, make sure you let them know. You do not have to accept rubbish gear shifting for what it is. Mistake number one is riding a bike that frankly doesn't work. It doesn't matter how much your bike costs or what gears you're running, they can all be made to function. And I mean that, from Shimano Dura-Ace and SRAM Red to Shimano Sora and below, they can all be made to work accurately. If your rear gears aren't working properly, then the vast majority of the time, you're going to solve your problem with this, the barrel adjuster. So turning it will gently move the position of the derailleur underneath the cogs until they are perfectly aligned. A common mistake, however, is to start fiddling around with these. So these are your high and low limit adjustment screws. But you see, they have no function over the control of your rear derailleur other than to stop the chain from going over the top of your cassette and getting jammed in your spokes, and going over this side of your cassette and getting jammed in the frame. But the thing to remember is that once they're set, you almost never ever need to touch them, only really in the event of a crash and you bend your derailleur or your derailleur hanger. So if you bought your bike from a reputable bike shop, you can forget about them, almost entirely. And the one above it as well, the B-tension screw, you can forget about that. What? Well, yeah, fair enough, that is a valid question, but hear me out. You see, your rear derailleur is one thing, and your front derailleur is an entirely different beast. And dare I say it, altogether more temperamental. You are far more likely to have your chain come off, changing gear up here, than back there. But just as with your rear derailleur, it's your high and low limit screws that are the ones that generally are stopping the chain coming off. And so a big mistake is not checking their position on your front derailleur. And it's a very simple job to do, so let me explain. With the chain on your easiest gears, you want to adjust the low limit screw until the inner plate of the front derailleur is about 1 millimeter away from the outside of your chain. And then set the high limit screw, put your chain in the biggest gear that you've got, and then you need to make sure that the outer plate of the derailleur is again about 1 millimeter away from your chain. That should do it. Not listening. And I don't just mean to this video, I mean to your gears. Because you see, gears that aren't working are annoying. Firstly, because more often than not, you'll be in the wrong gear. But secondly, because gears that don't work are noisy. And trying to ignore those noises is a mistake, because actually if you listen to them, they're telling you why they're not working. So if the noise is coming from your front derailleur rubbing against your chain, then you will more often than not just need to adjust the position of it. You can do that firstly by increasing or decreasing the cable tension using a barrel adjuster that you could well have up here. So to move it outboard, you simply increase the cable tension, and to move it inboard, you decrease it. And then, as we've just heard with your high and low limit screws, if the chain is in the big ring and it's rubbing on the outermost plate, then you will need to back off the high limit screw. And if the chain is rubbing when it's on the little ring on the innermost plate, then you need to back off the low limit screw. Fortunately, your rear derailleur is in this case much simpler. If that's making a noise, then you simply need to eyeball the position of the derailleur underneath the cassette and then adjust it using that barrel adjuster. So if you turn it anti-clockwise, you'll be moving the derailleur inboard, and if you turn it clockwise, you'll be moving it outboard. There are times where no matter how much you fiddle around with the indexing of your gears, you are just not going to get them to work properly. And that is because silky smooth gears rely on silky smooth cables. Basically, as soon as your cables start getting sticky, either through water ingress or grit, you will struggle to downshift. And that is because the little springs in the derailleurs just aren't strong enough to overcome the friction in the cables. Therefore, you click the shifter and nothing really happens. In fact, just enough happens for you to start thinking that your gears aren't indexed correctly. So there are times where you just need to admit defeat and pop down to your local bike shop and buy a new set of cables. And not doing so is a common mistake. When you do finally come to replace your cables, it's a simple enough job. However, as you might have guessed, there are common mistakes that you need to avoid. For example, you've fitted the new cable, you've cinched the cable tight in the cable clamp bolt, and then you forget to pre-stretch the cables. Now that might be because actually it's not stretching at all. What you're after is to compress all the housing and the cable ferrules into the cable stops. Because if you don't do that and you just index your gears, when you do come to ride your bike, you start changing gears out in the wild, the compression will happen out there, and then your indexing will go completely out of whack. So you need to remember to pre-stretch. And then the other thing is actually using the wrong tools to cut your new cables in the first place. So you need a proper set of cable cutters, because that will make a nice clean cut. If you try to use something else, like a set of pliers, all you could do is end up hacking away for ages and making a real mess of your cables. Right then, don't ignore your rubber shifting on your road bike. That is the first point. You need to listen to what the bike is telling you. You want to ignore your limit screws, basically, on your rear derailleur, but then paradoxically, don't neglect them on your front derailleur. And then also bear in mind that there are times where no matter how much you do, you are just going to have to go back to square one and put new cables on your bike. Now, if you don't know how to index your gears and set them up in the correct way, only these mistakes, then we've got two great videos, one for your rear derailleur and one for your front derailleur. But before I throw to either of those, I'm just going to ask you to make sure that you've subscribed to GCN. To do that, it's very simple. Just click on the globe, and it is, I need to remind you, completely free. And then those two videos, right, how to index your rear derailleur is down here, and how to index your front derailleur is just down there.